Hi, America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt. Grim day for Republicans. Raphael Warnock has beaten Kelly Loeffler, taken one Senate seat. It looks like Jon Ossoff is going to beat David Perdue. That has not been called by any of the networks as I begin my broadcast today. But as I look at the numbers, Jon Ossoff is about 15,000 votes ahead, 16,000 votes ahead of David Perdue, and almost all the vote is counted, and where it is still outstanding, it's the military ballot. So if it was 1,000 votes, I'd say, okay, David Perdue can make up 1,000 votes in the military ballot. But there are a few overseas ballots which tend to break Democratic, and there is a bunch of blue ballots left out. So everyone's being cautious. But I think that the Republicans have lost both seats and that the Senate control will pass to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. How I shudder to say those words. But it'll be a 51-50 Senate. We have been there once before after the election of George W. Bush in overtime until Jim Jeffords jumped in 2001. It was a 50-50 Senate. They split the committees at that time, 50-50. So I assume they will do the same. Nevertheless, that means judicial confirmations of all but the most extraordinarily controversial judges will go through, confirmations for all of the nominees will go through, and taxes will skyrocket. Now, Senator Joe Manchin has said he will not support ending the filibuster, so that means nothing else besides the reconciliation bills, which typically have to do with finance and taxes. They could have immigration reform attached to them if they tax people in the regularization pool. That's possible. But the District of Columbia is not going to become a state, and the Supreme Court's not going to expand so long as Joe Manchin holds by his word. And we've been here before. I tweeted out earlier today, and I hope you follow me on Twitter, at Hugh Hewitt, and I hope you follow my YouTube, which is, again, very hard to remember, Hugh Hewitt on YouTube. Or you can be watching on Instagram or Facebook right now, or you could be watching on hughhewitt.com, my website. Democrats have controlled the presidency, the House, and the Senate in 2009 and 10. That brought us Obamacare. In 1993 to 1994, that brought us Hillary Care, but it didn't pass. And in 1977 to 1980, and that brought us the Soviets in Afghanistan and the Iranian Revolution. In 1961 to 1968, which wrecked the country because of the Great Society. But it's a cycle. And the cycle begins again yesterday night. And so the Republicans have to chin up and move forward. The blame game doesn't really interest me, but it's useful for people to indulge in a little bit. 1-800-520-1234. Some people are blaming Brian Kemp for running poor elections in the fall and for appointing Kelly Loeffler instead of Doug Collins. It was my advice at the time, frequently and fervently stated he ought to appoint Doug Collins because first-time candidates are usually bad candidates. And Kelly Loeffler was not a very good candidate. I got nothing against Kelly Loeffler. I had an open invitation for her to appear on this show. She never came on. Mike Gallagher went to Georgia to help her get elected. She never came on. I think she did Fox and Friends once because she didn't have the confidence to do radio on a center-right show, which I'll tell you, David Perdue's a good candidate. He got caught in the undertow of the controversy swirling around. And many people blame President Trump for the controversy, for pitting Republican against Republican. And when you have a close election like this, just imagine the Brian Kemp supporters out there and the Raffensperger. I mean, it's not many with Raffensperger. He's the Secretary of State. Nobody cares about Secretary of State. But Brian Kemp has his core. And if his core is 5 to 10% and you're threatening to primary him, you're done. So a lot of people are going to blame President Trump. To me, it doesn't matter. What matters is going forward. We need a new generation of leadership under the wise hand of Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy in the House. They got to go out and do candidate recruitment. Rick Scott becomes suddenly the most important person in the party besides Mitch. He's got to go out and recruit people to run in the 2022 cycle to get the Senate back. And he's got to go out, McCarthy's got to go out and recruit people to run, but he can't do that yet because redistricting has to happen. The good news is redistricting is going to be very beneficial to the Republicans. We really are at a low point right now. We being the Republican Party, I'm a proud Republican, I've been my whole life. And the good news is we got good candidates running in 2022, like Rob Portman in Ohio. He'll win handily. And the Democrats will have trouble getting anyone to run because all, except for one cycle, the 2002 cycle, where George W. Bush picked up Senate seats, the incumbent party loses. I certainly hope Pat Toomey, if he's listening. By the way, I'd love your call, 1-800-520-1234. Many of you may not have stayed up all night. Many of you may be tired. Many of you may be distraught. Do not be distraught. Let not your hearts be worried. It's a great country. The Constitution is very strong. And we're not going to see the filibuster go away if Joe Manchin holds to his word, and I believe he will. They're not going to expand the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is a 6-3 conservative majority. There are going to be a lot of very left-wing judges added to the court bench in the next 2 years. They cannot be stopped now. They could have been bottled up, the worst nominees. I told you about that. But now we will get the worst possible nominees, and they will get through. We will get a tax hike, a significant tax hike. Some people moved money around, took money out of IRAs and 401ks in 2020 for fear that 2021 would lead to significant tax hikes, and it will. It will. That's the one thing I think is guaranteed out of this election, assuming nothing short of a miracle in Georgia with David Perdue. There will be a recount, but the election was the most heavily watched and carefully controlled election. It wasn't stolen. It is what it is. The one thing that is guaranteed is a massive tax hike and a massive spending bill. So I note I'm going to do my Birch Gold ad early today, all right? So I often tell you about Birch Gold as the hedge against inflation. I often tell you that you've got to be at least somewhat invested in gold by going to hughgold.com or by texting my name, Hugh, to 474747. Well, listen to me. Gold is up to 1960 this morning. It's up 0.3% already this morning and going up because people understand Democrats spend money. Now, we've been spending a lot of money because of the COVID crisis, and necessarily so, but Democrats spend a lot of money anyway, and they don't spend it on the military. And when they spend a lot of money, we're going to be in the Jimmy Carter cycle. And in 4 years, we're going to be in 1980 all over again, and a new Reagan has to arise because we are going to have inflation. And that's when you want to be in gold. You want to have a portion of your IRA or 401k in gold. You want to go into gold. You want to buy some gold, and you buy it from Birch Gold, hughgold.com, or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. I didn't intend to do the Birch Gold spot this early in the show, but it makes sense because in light of losing, I was fairly confident yesterday morning based on the Rove prediction, but the turnout was much higher. They were looking for a turnout of about 1 million, 1.2 million. It looked like 1.5 million people voted yesterday. And the African-American vote came out very heavily, and the Republican vote stayed home. And I'm looking at President Trump and Brian Kemp yelling at each other for 2 months, getting people mad. It's unfortunate. It is what it is. Keith in Georgia. What say you, Keith?
How you doing, you?
I'm not happy.
Well, neither am I, but I will say this much. We're finished. There's nothing the Republicans can do at this point now. And I'll tell you why. Immediately once they get those 2 senators from Georgia up there, they will get rid of the filibuster. Don't say Joe Manchin's going to be the hero. He's a Democrat, and he will fall in line with the party. They hide behind that moderate tone to get elected in their states. Joe Manchin will do everything Chuck Schumer says. The filibuster is gone. The next step will be to get the D.C. statehood and Puerto Rico statehood. After that, pack the courts. Then it's going to go after the Bill of Rights. Watch the sweeping moves on the Bill of Rights.
Okay, Keith, I just want to point out, I disagree with you. I don't believe Joe Manchin will bend on that. But if he does, D.C. cannot be made a state. And I want to start that campaign right now. It's unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court will strike that down. Puerto Rico can be made a state, and the Republicans are competitive there. But you're right about Bill of Rights. There will be gun legislation if the court, if any of the things you say come true. I believe Joe Manchin. I don't believe he's going to vote to end the filibuster. I don't. And, of course, he will come under enormous pressure, but West Virginia likes him. If they pressure him too much, he'll change parties like Jim Jeffords. And I hope he's thinking about that right now. Keith, thank you for the call. 1-800-520-1234. Reactions after the Georgia disaster for Republicans? After this message. Stay